Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So we're learning more about Matthew Livelsberger. I think I was calling him, no, it's Livelsberger, and I was calling him Livelsberger. Anyway, it's Livelsberger. He is the active duty military member who set off the explosives and the fireworks in that Tesla Cybertruck outside of Donald Trump's Vegas hotel. And I have to say, before I dive into these details, I find it very telling that Donald Trump hasn't said a word about this. Now, of course, if this had been done by someone on the left, he would be ranting and raving 24/7, right? He'd be on his failing social media site all day, every day, running this person down. But instead, he's conspicuously silent, since we now know that Livelsberger was a MAGA man. And the police shared notes that they found supposedly on Livelsberger's phone. These show that he was a hardcore right-winger. And so in one of the notes, he wrote, quote, "This was not a terrorist attack. It was a wake-up call." And then Livelsberger went on to say, quote, "Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence. What better way to get my point across than a stunt with fireworks and explosives?" Livelsberger also warned that our country is, quote, "terminally ill." And he wrote, quote, "Fellow service members, veterans, and all Americans, time to wake up. We are being led by weak and feckless leadership who only serve to enrich themselves." Then Livelsberger also encouraged the takeover of federal buildings. He called for current and former military members to, quote, "move on DC starting now and occupy every major road along Fed buildings." And he said, quote, "Try peaceful means first, but be prepared to fight to get the Dems out of the Fed government and military by any means necessary. They all must go, and a hard reset must occur for our country to avoid collapse." And as you'd expect, Livelsberger ranted about culture war nonsense that is constantly pushed by right-wing media. He wrote, quote, "Stop obsessing over diversity. We are all diverse, and DEI is a cancer. Thankfully, we rejected the DEI candidate, meaning Kamala Harris, and we'll have a real president instead of Weekend at Bernie's." Yeah. Now we get to have Weekend at Mar-a-Lago with the puppet strings being pulled by Elon Musk. So anyway, in addition to warning about the country and Democrats, Livelsberger said that he did this now because, quote, "I needed to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took." And you might recall that last week I mentioned Livelsberger had removed photos from his Facebook page, which celebrated his engagement to his second wife. Well, it's now been confirmed she left him days before this incident. So all of this dispels MAGA conspiracy theories that this was a psyop and this was perpetrated by the deep state. MAGA had also been spreading rumors recently that Livelsberger was basically already deceased before the Cybertruck arrived at Trump Hotel. Well, Tesla, owned by Elon Musk, confirmed the vehicle was never switched into self-driving mode. So that's all been debunked. And then several news outlets have spoken with an ex-girlfriend of Livelsberger. It's a military nurse named Alicia Arit, I think is how you pronounce her name. So Arit explained he suffered from a traumatic brain injury. Apparently, he had several blasts near him and around him when he was deployed overseas, and she said it left him with, quote, "a cloudy memory, poor concentration, difficulty maintaining relationships, and intense guilt over his actions on the battlefield." And she said his symptoms were textbook for basically PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And she went on to say that in 2020, quote, he was having paranoia and nightmares. He was exhausted and depressed. He was gaining weight and he couldn't think. Livelsberger, she said, wanted to get more help, but she said that there's a lot of shame and there's a stigma involved, especially for active duty members. Plus, Arit said, quote, if he got flagged for having depression or having a traumatic brain injury, he would have been made non-deployable, and he absolutely did not want that. He wanted to be there for his guys. And she described him as, quote unquote, politically moderate, incredibly intelligent, and never mean. And Arit told the Washington Post that Livelsberger never really struck her as an extremist, although she said he was definitely conservative. And they broke up apparently because he didn't want to be a stepfather to her son, and she didn't want to have to move for his career. But Arit spoke very highly of him and said that he helped her through one of the most difficult times in her life. And this kind of has been a theme with people who knew him and spoke with the press, because by all accounts, they're all saying, he was very generous, he was a caring man. There was an Afghan interpreter who told a journalist that when Livelsberger was deployed in Afghanistan in 2009, he brought a stray dog to the team compound so that they could take care of it. And when that same interpreter obtained a visa and was able to resettle in the US, this was in 2013, he said Livelsberger picked him up from the airport and then he started a fundraiser for him and his family because they were, completely starting over. But Livelsberger was very clearly still struggling near the end because Sam Shoemate is a retired soldier. He runs an Instagram account that's really popular with military veterans. And he was on an online show on Friday of last week. And Shoemate told this audience and told the host that Livelsberger reached out to him via email the day before his death. Now, there's some, of course, there's conspiracy theories and some debate over whether or not this email is legit, but I'll tell you what it said first, and then I'll tell you why. Evidently, Livelsberger had asked Shoemate to help him reach different media outlets so he could share his concerns over drone technology and quote-unquote war crimes that he witnessed in Afghanistan. Now, the drone issue that he's talking about is apparently in this letter, he said that these drones that we've been seeing, I guess, over New Jersey, that they are Chinese technology. This is technology, he says, that we have and the Chinese have, and that, basically they could, hover over the White House and kill the president at any moment. And, it's game over and, this is incredibly dangerous and blah, blah, blah. Livelsberger also sounded very paranoid in this message. He told Shoemate, quote, I am armed and have a massive VBIED, which stands for Vehicle Borne Improvised Explosive Device. He then went on to say, quote, I've been trying to maintain a very visible profile and have kept my phone, and they are definitely digitally tracking me. The FBI, however, says we had no interest in him. We had no idea. He was not on our radar until this explosion on New Year's Day. So here's the deal. People are saying this document, this so-called email that this man brought forth and says that he received from Livelsberger before his death, they're saying because of a cursor that's in the document and, different things that they're seeing, that it appears to be fabricated. This man who he reached out to, supposedly, he is saying, well, I had to take out names of people that shouldn't be out there in the public. So I had to load it into a different document and make those changes and take out these people's names. Who knows, right? It's going to have to be authenticated. I'm sure if Livelsberger did send it to him, there will be, there will be documentation. There will be something showing that he sent it. So we'll wait to see on that. But, just as we've seen with so many January 6 defendants and convicts, alt-right propaganda and mental health issues do not mix. They are a very dangerous combination. And it's so sad that veterans suffer like this in silence, especially the men. It appears that they would rather lose their wives, they'd rather lose their children instead of getting counseling and asking for help. What does that say about our society? What does that say about our values and how we define a man in our culture? I mean, to me, asking for help, admitting that you have a problem, that is one of the bravest things that a person can do. Because it means, you're in for some change. You got to take a hard look at yourself, and you have to put your life and psyche in the hands of another person. It takes a lot of strength and courage to do something like that. So I don't know why there's still this stigma around it. There should not be. And you would think that the military would want their veterans to receive care while they're still in the military so that they can be the best versions of themselves. But even Arit, even his ex-girlfriend, as a military nurse, said no, they would prefer to have these guys in the field, work them until they just give out, until they are left, with a brain that doesn't function properly, and then they're gone, and then they're out, and then they're the problem of the VA. That is deplorable. That is just a horrific way to treat people who put their lives on the line for this country. So, who knows? Maybe if he did not have these brain injuries, who knows what his political persuasion would have been? Who knows, if he would have been radicalized, as it seems, at least from what we're hearing at this point. So anyway, I will let you know when I hear more. I'm sure there will be more coming out. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share, and subscribe. Please donate if you can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.